Donald Trump. Their first face-to-face meeting in this presidential election, their first face-to-face meeting ever.
A historic race for president.
I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation, and it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame. You need Trump back as president, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world.
So this duel between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump has once again clearly shown, for anyone who hasn't seen it yet, or anyone who doesn't know yet. Donald Trump is, on one hand, completely unfit in character for any leadership position, especially the presidency. And he also simply has, how should one say, a limited intellectual capacity, is very predictably and therefore also, in that regard, quite a simple mind. There are overall 3 primary areas of concern with Donald Trump that can be clearly identified. That's the unstable reference to reality, that's a narcissistic issue, something that's totally overdiagnosed, but he's one of the rare cases who actually has it. And it's the predictability, or how should one phrase it, he's simply not that bright either. I'll go through the 3 points one by one. What is an unstable reference to reality? An unstable reference to reality means that people usually have some sort of connection between what they think, what they perceive, what they consider to be true, and what is actually out there in reality. So most individuals would struggle to say, when they see a green tree, that it is a pink horse, because there is a barrier between what I see, what I objectively see, and what I believe and what I perceive. This connection is fundamentally absent in people with an unstable reference to reality. I made a video on my channel about Donald Trump discussing this unstable reference to reality. They can mix things up however they want. If it's more advantageous for the tree to be portrayed as a pink horse instead as a green tree, they'll say it is indeed a pink horse. And of course they know it's not a pink horse, but it doesn't matter to them because this reality check is disconnected. More importantly, the pink horse actually feels right to them. That reflects an unstable reference to reality. The perceived truth surpasses reality. This, of course, is clearly observable with Trump and quite extensively. If not enough people attend the presidential inauguration, he simply doesn't care whatsoever. He would say, there have never been so many people coming for a president. It's objectively incorrect, but it feels right nonetheless. Or he knows that the election actually turned out badly for him. He will stand up confidently, with full conviction, and declare that he won and was even better than the first time. Because the subjective truth, as one feels, it beats the actual truth. Yesterday, one could quite clearly see all the different variations of this issue once more. That's what most people always call lies. Yes, they are lies, but it's actually perceived truth. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. And here he comes with World War III. Here he comes with the migrants eating dogs and cats. Here he comes with the accusation that the pro-choice advocates who support an abortion rule, they would want to execute babies. So you can see there's just no restraint anymore, whether something is true or not. There are migrants who are, so to speak, gathered from psychiatric clinics and prisons in other states and put into the USA. Or he can then pointedly say something like, crime rates are dropping all over the world, in all countries, only in the USA is it rising. Why is it so? Because these other countries are sending their criminals to the USA. That's clearly absurd to the extreme, and it's 500 times not true in any way, but the message is indeed good, and you can already notice the people who will only hear the message, who don't care whether it's true or not, but who say, outrageous, of course, we have to vote for him. He's the only one who speaks the truth. It's evident that it's about a version of truth where concrete facts don't matter. What counts is actually the perceived truth and the influence it has. One could somewhat cynically say that Trump basically highlights the principle that we see otherwise in politics, that one makes bold statements and uses cliches. Essentially, he has mastered this by declaring that he's not particularly concerned with the facts as long as the message sounds appealing. If the picture is good that crime rates are dropping everywhere in the world, but only rising in the USA, because all the criminals from other countries are being sent to the USA, which is obviously total nonsense. If that's a good message, then I'll deliver it. Whether it's true or not doesn't matter. That's perceived truth. That's unstable reference to reality. The second problem he has is that he's truly a narcissist. He really has a narcissistic issue. And I always say that right away with the note. Narcissistic personality disorders are mercilessly overdiagnosed. It's almost like a widespread phenomenon. Someone who is athletic, someone who is fashionable, maybe someone who can assert their interests confidently is often already seen as narcissistically disturbed. Sadly, psychologists and psychiatrists join in that game. And that's why we have way too many narcissistic disorders being diagnosed. Narcissistic disorders are indeed rare, truly very rare. However, Donald Trump is someone who is one of these very rare cases. He experiences it to the fullest extent. And what does that mean in full? It's people who consider themselves great. Inflate, stage, enormous, and they're always demanding, I want to be recognized and I want to be admired. I want to be admired for my uniqueness. And the essential point is they are constantly in need of this ongoing feed of uniqueness and admiration. They demand it for their own well-being. They crave that constant, absurd validation of incredible greatness, of brilliant strokes of genius, of amazing abilities. They need it even if it's absurd, because it's like a drug for them. They need it for the stability of their self-worth. And when it doesn't come, or if someone doubts it or someone criticizes them, they take it personally because it deeply hurts their personality, because they have a perceived right for their genius and uniqueness to be recognized, and they take it personally when anyone fails to acknowledge that. Doesn't give him admiration. That's why he loves to be adored and constantly talks about himself. And that's the reason why he's constantly putting on such an enormous, utterly absurd and amazing extravaganza of his own persona. Completely exaggerated, completely wrong, but he really is a narcissist. He needs that, and he is deeply hurt when he doesn't receive it, when there's criticism, when someone has a different opinion. He can't handle that. And you must admit, someone who has this so distinct, he of course disqualifies himself in a very obvious way from holding any kind of leadership position or interacting appropriately with employees. And you could really see that again yesterday. He just has to emphasize that he's unique, that he has incredible achievements that he simply invents because it feels so good for him. And you could see that well in combination with the third problem area. This third problem area, it's unfortunately the man simply isn't intelligent. He's just not smart. Even if he thinks otherwise, calling himself a stable genius sees himself like that. Due to narcissism, that's how he sees himself, but he really isn't smart. He is totally predictable. He's basically a simple-minded person. You could clearly see that yesterday. They will have ensured that Kamala Harris was trained to throw him a handful of scraps, which he would enthusiastically pounce on like a piranha. You throw a piece of meat into the water, immediately it can't help it. It has to pounce on it. She then, for example, said with a sly tone, just take a look at Donald Trump's campaign speeches. And there you see, she quoted some of his outrageous lies, his absurdities, like him saying windmills cause cancer and some other complete nonsense. He makes such statements and then people get bored, resulting in them leaving the event early. And of course he can't let that stand, he has to jump on it. My events are the biggest. And so many people are with me at events like never before with any president, never. And you can really notice he can't handle it. He's spinning and feels the need to emphasize it, and then he's already forgotten what he was supposed to say. And this is this predictable and stereotypical behavior. You just have to say he's not smart. He doesn't get it that someone's throwing him a stick and he's jumping on it. He's completely predictable, totally simple-minded. He just can't change his nature. And in that instance, he's also way too predictable too calculable, I have to say. And there's one last thing to add, and then I'm at the end of my video for today. Absolutely, in his madness, amid his disorder and in his character flaw, there's a sense of genuine authenticity in it. It's quite challenging to imagine that the man genuinely takes any advice seriously. Most likely those PR people most probably had to drill it deeply into him before the duel. Please, no racist remarks, no misogynistic ones. That seems to have partially sunk in, like he's been able to somewhat keep to that boundary. But that's likely the end of the line. You can't change more with him, as he's the genius, he knows best, and cannot tolerate different opinions. And that's a significant part of his success, because he knows how to deliver his messages in a manner that deeply resonates with the emotions of his listeners. It doesn't matter if that's true or not. If you want to highlight migration problems, you want to trigger people with this topic, there's really no reason to trigger that, because the problems are really there. But he has to exaggerate. They also have to eat dogs and cats. And if he thought it would have a better effect to say they eat babies, he would also tell that because facts don't matter. He's so consistently focused on the impact, that it works. He is an agitator, a Pied Piper who simply caters to the emotions he perceives and then delivers those messages where he knows he will evoke a lot of emotions. And he'll reach some people because they'll get upset and say, what a bloody mess, and he's the only one speaking out. Of course, someone behaving that way is unfit for a leadership role for the presidency. That could be observed extremely well. Again yesterday, and if you remind yourself, what kind of person we have in front of us, a person, as I said, who has an unstable reference to reality, where facts play absolutely no role at all, a person who is utterly dependent on recognition and admiration, requiring it like air to breathe, and takes it extremely badly when it doesn't come through. So self-centered, that fundamentally contradicts responsible politics and leadership. And then, as I said, he is also predictable and calculable and stereotypical in his reactions, so that he won't be successful that way. And just to say in conclusion, you must not confuse. This authenticity gains him a certain approval because people say, yes, he is just truly himself. That creates a certain closeness. But there are things you see about the personality that are unsuitable for leadership positions. Yes, he's authentic, which creates a particular feeling of closeness, but what he's saying is often undoubtedly quite absurd. And you shouldn't confuse that he is emotional, that he freaks out, that he gets angry, that he says this today and that tomorrow. That is impulsivity, that is emotional instability. But it is not creativity or flexibility in thinking. And I think one must warn against that confusion. What we see there isn't about someone analyzing calmly, making clear decisions, and then perhaps also something long-term planning and knows how to get there. He is spontaneous, he acts in the moment, he's impulsive. That's certainly not what you'd call mentally flexible, adapting to situations. It's actually quite the opposite of that. And you could see that yesterday in the predictability of his reactions. And the PR team of Kamala Harris really hammered that in here as well. Just throw a few sticks his way because he's so incredibly predictable. And then he jumps on it and forgets everything on the left and right. He won't just do that only in a TV debate, he'll do it in politics, in his leadership behavior, in a meeting. He will do the same with other statesmen. And they're not stupid either. Thus, although he sees himself quite differently, he is a weak character. And that's how the others will treat him as well. In the end, one can only hope that, when you consider the initial situation, it's not like Kamala Harris, or with the Democrats that there aren't critical points and issues. One might question, will they tackle the migration issues that really need to be addressed properly? There are many critical points, and Harris is not a shining figure and not a perfect solution. But it must be absolutely clear that when you examine Kamala Harris and Donald Trump with these three problem areas being presented, Kamala Harris is clearly the much, 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 much lesser evil. And that's why you have to hope that she wins and not Donald Trump, who clearly is unsuitable in character.